my God, we're talking about Hotline Miami. I'm sorry, everybody.
We are talking Hotline Miami from Denatun Games, published by Devolver Digital. And I would argue this is the game that really put Devolver Digital on the map.
Probably. This game was everyone's homework. I hope you played it before the episode. You can probably do that because it's not too long of a game. You can play it like me over the course of like 4 or 5 days and just break it up into little chunks because it feels nicely segmented. The game is really, broken up into just a bunch of levels. There's like, I don't know, 18 maybe. And those levels are into different chapters, as one would expect. It's like reading a book, except instead of a book, it's a video game. And my dirty little secret that I've been holding on to for a hot minute is that I've never played Hotline Miami, and I think I've lied about playing Hotline Miami before too. I can't think of another game that I've lied and said I have lied once and said that I played Kingdom Hearts, but that was like a throwaway conversation that never mattered, and I just wanted to get out of it. But I think I've like genuinely been in like a conversation with other people who play games. Notice how I didn't say gamers because that's a dirty word. Other people who play games, and I'm like, yeah, I played Hotline Miami just to like fit in, but I didn't.
Why did you feel the need to lie about it?
Dude, this is a podcast, not a therapy session.
No, I'm just curious, though. What is it about Hotline Miami that it made it... Well, why?
Maybe because it felt like it was cool. It's like, oh, I don't want to be someone who didn't play that game. That game's a good game that people like. Nick's Steam avatars from Hotline Miami. I think that's probably because it's really easy to make your Steam avatar that. That's neither here nor there. But I know that there's a lot of people who like this game. It got a lot of buzz. The second one people were really stoked about. It helped put Devolver on the map. I've heard... people love it, whether they love it for the music or the aesthetic or the gameplay. And every time I saw it, I just... Here, confession number 2. I feel like I have problems with games that have a Hotline Miami-esque, old-school, pixel arty aesthetic. I think I generally try and stray away from those, like the top-down, low-fidelity ones. Some things, fine. Celeste... totally cool. Not my favorite, but totally cool. Or like, Into the Breach kind of has like a semi-pixel graphic aesthetic. Fine, it's like halfway there. But I when I'm looking at indie games, I tend to stray away from things that look like Terraria.
Yeah.
Which I'd put Hotline Miami in. And I don't know why. Is that like the same as being racist? Am I like pixelist?
Well, I think that right now, we are at an oversaturation of games that have like a 16:8, 1632-bit style like sprite art. One, because it's easy. It's not easy to make those things, but it's easier than rendering out something. I guess
you gotta wash your hands.
Something that's not. I've washed my hands so much today.
20 seconds, hot water.
I washed my hands.
He's touching his nose.
It's fine.
We live together.
I'm a healthy boy.
God.
If anything, you might be at risk. But I think there's so much of those kinds of games on like just the Steam marketplace alone that it feels like you're just kind of inundated with retro style looks. But that being said, I think I love that look personally, but I think Hotline Miami is a little bit of an outlier, especially for me, because I think the game looks ugly. Like I think it's a top-down sprite-based game that is ugly, but I think that the ugliness of it transcends like just the look, but it kind of permeates your skin in a way that makes you feel kind of gross. Like the way you do if you drink maybe one drink too many and you kind of feel sloppy. And like that's the vibe the game gives me. Like I just feel kind of gross playing the game.
And the game, so what made this game a hit? Because the gameplay and the mechanics is fun, I'll give it that. But I'll also say that it's challenging, and I feel like while challenge doesn't always, like, I feel like the more challenging a game is, and I think Hotline Miami is relatively challenging at parts, the lower probability it has for success, because sometimes people just don't want that. Also, it does have like that kind of gross aesthetic, where it's not like it's, you know, there is like the gross that's like a Tarantino-esque gross from what it's doing, but there's also just like the gross you're describing, where it looks not clean. Like, I wonder if they really wanted that, or if they would have had more time, money, or different artists, if they would have like tried to make it a little less janky, because the game is a little bit janky.
How so?
Whether it be like, some of the way that the sprite animations work, people falling down, whether it be like the controls of viewing the camera, whether it be like the AI interactions or lack thereof. Sometimes it feels like the game is consistently only 90% there, and then every once in a while you get taken out. You're like, wow, that AI just like walked a path, saw me, and then went back to its home, and then just stood there, but is looking the wrong way and isn't even on its patrol route anymore. So what? Like you get pulled out and you're like, this is definitely a video game.
Yeah, and I think that Hotline Miami doesn't shy away from recognizing itself as a video game. So going back a little bit to why I think this game got so popular. One, it kind of introduced the world to the idea of like instant replay upon death. Like that's a feature. Like I know Super Meat Boy kind of did it, but I feel like this feels different than Super Meat Boy in a way that feels less infuriating and a way that almost kind of encourages you to continue again. Whereas Super Meat Boy almost feels mean in how it's like difficult. Mm-hmm. And I think that the barrier of entry, just press a button to respawn, you're right there. You're in the middle of the action. The music's still bumping. It feels like you never really died to begin with. So I think that's one of the big things because it came at just the right point. The first 2 Dark Souls are out by this point. Bloodborne is also out by this point. So like people are hungering for challenging, tough games. But also I think one of the most interesting things about Hotline Miami is it does its best to remind you that you are playing a video game, and that it ties that notion to its like central narrative. Like there's like an overarching narrative about like Jacket going about and doing these mysterious killings for some reason. But I think if you take a look back at Hotline Miami from like a metatextual level, it really is all about how people are conditioned to play video games without really asking any questions. One, because it feels good. Like the game feels good to play. It feels good when you run around room to room, get combos for killing people quickly and stylishly.
I definitely didn't play the game for the combos. Sorry to cut you off. I quickly found out that like the style points were less interesting to me than like the tactical points. I didn't want to master any level. I just wanted to finish it.
Well, it's less even about combo, because when I say combo, I don't really mean like, oh, I'm gonna make sure I change things up here. Instead of throwing something, I'm gonna punch them. It's more so just your ability to go on these chains of killing people uninterrupted. It's almost like a twisted ballet to some extent, where you're just like, okay, what's the fastest way I can make my way through this level while never coming to a stop, essentially. And I think it's that kind of frenetic gameplay coupled with like, this feels good. Like you are punching people's heads in, you are gouging out their eyes with your fingers. You're doing some heinous stuff, but it's fun. And the game was like, the game doesn't criticize you for it. The game, unlike games like Spec Ops: The Line, which are like, oh, you're fucked up, dude. You shot those innocents. Whereas Hotline Miami does it a little more maturely and asks you, why does this feel good? And then it forces you to ask that question. So it's not criticizing you. It's just asking you why you do.
How did I miss that? Is that because I skipped over every piece of text in the game?
That might be it. Yeah. No, for sure. I think the first time you know that this game might be a little bit more than what you think it is, when there's more than meets the eye, is the opening, though. When you're just kind of presented in a room with the 3 people wearing masks, and the first line in the game is, do you like hurting other people? And that kind of is the central, I would say, the central theme of Hotline Miami. And again, this is coming from someone who just, like, once I beat the game, I was like, there's something here that I'm not seeing. And then I unlocked, helmets, little side quests at the end of the game. Mm-hmm. And like, I realized there was more to this game than meets the eye. And so I did my best to kind of really pick apart the meaning. And then, do you know who Errant Signal is, right? On YouTube?
Yes.
Errant Signal, I think one of their most popular videos, most famous videos, is their analysis of Hotline Miami. And it goes in depth on how it is like this metatextual look at video game design, us players' investment into video game design, and just
I think I've probably watched that episode and then was like, I haven't played this game, and then stopped, because Aaron Signal does do some interesting YouTube content. It's like video essays for those who don't know.
Yeah.
That are like really into like the literature of video games, and sometimes it is fucking heady. Like if you think Super Bunny Hop can get heady, man, Aaron Signal can get like into some philosophy books of someone that I never even heard before. Like it's wild.
It's a good one though. Highly recommend it if you're
Maybe I'll go watch it. Maybe I'll go watch it tonight. I think. See now you're talking about the reasons why this game is like potentially great, right? Or why like people love it. Mm-hmm. And
well, I don't think that's why people love it though. I just think that that's there for people like me who love it, but it's also
the extra layer.
But it's also there on a subconscious level though. Like I'm big into that. You know, I'm big into the subconscious.
I feel like I am a simpleton sometimes. As much as it pains me to admit it, I can sometimes be a real simpleton. And I felt like there wasn't that hook for me. And I think the difference when I play a game that's like a good game or a solid game versus a great game is a game that makes me feel invested enough to actually want to read the narrative, because man, reading's a barrier of entry to me, and there isn't even that much reading in Hotline Miami. It's not like it's some fun. It's not like you're playing Disco Elysium or something.
Yeah, it's pretty sparse.
It's pretty light, but even with how light it was, I found myself going like mash, 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 and that's a sign that like something is wrong for me, right? Because I feel not engaged enough to try and get it on that level. I just wanted to play the core mechanics of let's bump this music, bust and put a mask on. Always the mask where doors kill people. I think that's one of the better ones.
Oh, I don't like that one.
Why not?
It throws off my rhythm. I like the rhythm of door bump, boom, knock out the guy across the room, go back to guy I bumped, stab him in the head, keep on moving. Like I like the way that feels.
Doors killing people I think is a great
What
one.
about punches kill people?
No.
Okay.
I found myself, what's the best way to express this? I found that I wasn't always fighting with the difficulty or the puzzle, but I was sometimes fighting with the controls. And there were times where like I thought I was gonna shoot someone, and then I got hit by a bullet that like felt unfair, or for some reason just the way that the mouse sensitivity was, or maybe I'm an old man now and like my aim isn't that good, but like I feel like there were times where I would just take a first shot and miss someone that I shouldn't, or like I would have problems snapping from target to target if I wanted to like kill 3 random people that are running at me. I felt like I had some problems with controlling firearms, and I played the game with a lot of firearms.
I could see that. I didn't really run into that issue. I played the game like 5 times at this one because it's so short. It's so short. I've always played with a controller just because I like the way that feels for that game.
I play with a mouse and keyboard, so.
But I have heard a lot of people play with mouse and keyboard. But like even going back to frustrating deaths, though, like I do think that the game is so forgiving in that, like there's no load time. You just hit a button, you restart, and it's pretty forgiving as far as checkpoints go. Like you just get started on whatever floor you entered, so it's not like that big of an investment or a loss whenever you die. But like going back to the difference in story and gameplay, I think Hotline Miami has enough to offer for people who want an interesting story, or for people who don't give a shit and just want to kill people. Like I think it appeals to both.
Yeah, it appealed for the latter. I didn't struggle to play it. Sometimes games like this, I sit down and I play all the way through because I'm like, short, I can do it. Between like the mild frustrations that I would have with it, or I didn't feel like I wanted to do it all at once, but I kept coming back. Like I'd play 3 levels, next day I'd be excited to play 3 more levels, and I'd put it down. And maybe that's me growing as a person playing games. Doesn't need to just like power through all of them. But I never felt like I didn't want to come back and finish Hotline Miami. I was having a good time all the time. That I was enjoying the puzzle aspect of it. So the core gameplay is obviously strong enough to keep me involved when I wasn't in love with everything else. I wasn't in love with the aesthetic. I wasn't in love with like the score screens at the end or like the weird vaporwave. I wasn't in love with this story or whatever you want to call it. But I liked the gameplay enough to keep playing, and that should be the hallmark of a good game, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Like it, I'm happy that I played it because I had fun kicking a door and then watching someone go, ooh.
Yeah, and I think like we've touched on it, I guess, a tiny bit, but like I think the thing that's instrumental in making the gameplay feel good or fun is the music, honestly. I think that there's like this is one of the finest examples of like music as the motivator for gameplay, because I felt like anytime I played the game I got into like a trance where I feel like my movement was in sync with the music to some extent, and it feels like it's just a natural extension of you as the player, which felt cool. It felt exciting. And really, it's the first time I ever played. Back when I played the game, it was for the first time. It was like I never really felt a game like that before. Like
The music was driving you.
yeah, where the music just felt like, no, this is your motivator. This is how you do your killing. And like I just love the assortment of music in this game, because it's all from a bunch of different artists. There's Moon has a couple tracks that he's featured in. You got Scattle on a couple, but like people that I know now because like I've just followed their music religiously after playing Hotline Miami. Like that's the music that I write to. Like it's the thing that I like always listen to. It's like ingrained in me at this point. And I think it's the first time I've ever had a game like, sure, I'd listen to Final Fantasy music on my phone, but it never felt like the motivating factor in playing the game. Yeah, it's pretty cool. And going back to the like vaporwave look, I feel like when it came out, it was kind of pioneering that look.
Yeah, time hasn't done a lot of favors because people have copied that because they liked it, right?
Yeah, I mean,
people responded well to it.
Yeah, exactly. And not only the music, but just the way it looks.
I can hear the menu music in my head right now. Like,
if it's like music as atmosphere, which is awesome. You recently watched the film Drive.
I shouldn't be chewing gum on a podcast. Yep.
Did that surface in your mind at all while playing the game?
Nope.
Really? That's fascinating. Yeah. Well, just because like the game was clearly inspired by Drive. Like just from the tone, the aesthetic, the music, the Outrun style music. Your character is wearing like, a jacket in the way that Ryan Gosling's character wears the scorpion jacket. He drives he has an iconic car that he revisits over and over. And there's moments of extreme violence, like stomping people in that. Like there's a lot of parallels, and the game is definitely inspired by.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that now, and now I kind of feel like a fool for being like, no, I wasn't. But like, I think that goes back to me not really sitting down for a metatextual analysis and me just being like, dude, the mechanics are kind of fun.
Yeah. Is there one thing about the game that you'd say, like outside of the mechanics, that stands out to you? Or would you say that really is the big thing?
I mean, obviously, like, the music stands out to me. The aesthetic stands out to me, even though I don't like it. But, like, it's the music. I think that's the easy first thing to point to. Because it slaps.
Yeah.
Is that what the kids say, slaps?
Yeah, it does.
It fucking slaps.
It's a good...
It's got a beat. It bonks.
No, you don't bonk.
Oh.
Bop.
You want to go, oh.
It bops.
It fucking bops. God, I hate myself. I couldn't ignore the music, obviously, and I couldn't ignore the game. I wish, I liked when levels were mixed up.
Yeah,
I think they do a decent job of introducing new elements of like, oh, hey, you might not have realized that was a metal detector, but you just iterated on a level and realized that was a metal detector. Fun stuff like that. Or, man, how do I kill these people who are in the middle of the room? Or how do I handle this boss fight? Or I think that they did a good job with pacing.
Yeah.
That is hard to do. It's easier to do when your game is shorter to pace it.
Oh, for sure.
But I I liked the variety. I liked the core gameplay. But at the same time, I'm saying all of this. I liked the gameplay. I liked the core gameplay. I don't feel like a drive to go play Hotline Miami 2. So does that mean that I didn't like it enough to like continue carrying on?
Well, I think it's interesting that you say that because, like, I totally, if the game didn't sell you on what lies ahead in a potential sequel, then, like, by all means, I don't think you should play it. But based on, like, your criticisms, I really think, like, Hotline Miami 2 is catered to people like you who looking to relive the gameplay with maybe a more invested storyline. Because Hotline Miami 2 continues the bangers, it continues the bops, it still slaps. The core gameplay loop is there, but where it differs... Oh, you didn't wash your hands, buddy. Oh, God, no, I'm infected.
You gotta watch the video version for that.
Oh, gosh, he just spit his gum at me. But Hotline Miami 2 does something a little bit different because it lets you play as 3 different perspectives from 3 different or it might be 2. But the entire game is centered around Hotline Miami. The events of Hotline Miami have become so popular and so infamous that people are making movies about it. People are making knockoff video games, and people are just being inspired by the violence in Hotline Miami. And so
That's a fun...
It's great. It's fantastic. Like, it's such a...
Because it's true. Because people were inspired by it. I get it. I understand why that would be.
It's such a smart look at the game. But there's moments where the game is like, what if you didn't have a weapon and you couldn't hurt someone? What do you do? And there's like, that sounds not fun based on what you learn in Hot Miami, but it's gripping in a way that the other game isn't. And I'm like, oh, I kind of dig this. There's like levels where you get kind of maimed and you're in a hospital and you have to escape from while you're unarmed and you're kind of like dazed and confused. It's pretty cool. But I think you'd be more invested in that narrative versus this one. Biggest complaint with that game, though, a lot of unfair deaths because a lot of bullets come from off screen and hit you. Which kind of
that even happened in Hotline Miami sometimes.
It's more infuriating in the sequel because there's way more cops. Those cops, man. Which I think, this might be me reading into it too much, but I think it's a metatextual how cops and their guns are unfair. Like it's some like criticism of the police. But I don't know. The dude Denton, the guy who's the head of Denton Games, I think one of the 2 or 3 people who made Hotline Miami is Swedish, I believe, or Norwegian.
I don't know.
He's like a European, like hardcore European dude.
Guns are bad.
But it's interesting that it's like a pretty pointed criticism of like Reagan era like politics in America.
Trickle down bullets.
It's really, I think there's a lot there. I think you should, if you're interested in it at all, check out the Aaron Signal because they really do a good job of unpacking it all.
Guns are scary. Yeah, let's so watch Aaron Signal on Hotline Miami, listen to the Daily, and play Hotline Miami. Is that the takeaway?
That's the takeaway.
I feel like Hotline Miami is something that in closing that I'm glad that I played for the sake of the podcast. I'm glad that I had that experience or that I don't have to lie about it ever again.
How do I know you're not lying now?
Oh fuck.
I can hear the music.
It's not going to be a game that I walk away from and feel like trendsettery about or like super stoked that I played. I feel like it firmly sits in the middle of the pack of like games. Like no bad feelings, some okay feelings, some good feelings. It's not broaching my, top 20 video games list.
Interesting.
Is a way to put it.
See, I was convinced you would enjoy it just because of like how hard it is and like challenging.
I don't think it was that hard, and the stuff I do think was hard felt unfair or out of my control, which isn't a good way to define hardness. I would know as someone who's fucking hard.
Got it.
Phrasing.
Joey, what's our next garbage game?
I don't know, man. I figure you should probably tell me because I think that I've picked. I think that I've probably picked the last couple, which feels selfish, honestly, because No, it cannot be Final Fantasy. Let's get that out.
Oh, good. We could be near.
No, it can also not be that. I one feel a little guilty because I don't think you've said no to anything I've pitched, but I have said no to at least 2 things you've pitched. I'm not playing Dragon Quest. Like, fuck you. I don't need that to round out my gaming experience knowledge. Maybe one day, man. Maybe let's make it a fucking Patreon goal or some bullshit. God, I could be so miserable doing that. So if you wanna throw some balls up in the air, just swing at one.
All right. I think we're gonna go with something a little more contemporary.
Contemporary?
Yeah, something that
means something new, right?
something controversial.
Controversial?
I think we're gonna go
What the fuck is controversial and new?
Pokemon Sword and Shield.
Oh,
Let's do Pokemon Sword and Shield.
dude, I cannot wait to record this podcast. Does that mean that you're gonna finish?
I'm gonna finish it.
I finished Pokemon on my trip. I won't get too much into it, but on my Europe trip, I played and finished all of Pokemon Sword and Shield, and I feel like I've been saving opinions for this podcast. So I won't bury the lead too much, but I feel a little fiery about it.
Okay.
Which I didn't start with, because if you start with a fire type, you're a piece of shit.
Well, there you go. Go check out Pokemon Sword and Shield, or maybe just wait to listen to our podcast and then check it out and decide. But,
Yep, not going to spoil it.
But until then, thank you all for watching. And if you are listening to this on your regular podcast feeds, consider backing us over on patreon.com/cybergarbage. You know the deal. You'll get early access to this podcast and Joey Hates Movies. You'll get the video and audio version a couple weeks early, unlike the freeloaders who wait for it to hit the podcast feed a couple weeks late. But by then, you'll be missing out. So don't feel FOMO. Back us over on Patreon for only $5 a month. But until then,
Bye.
choose your starter wisely. Goodbye.